views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host and or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of the host and or Paranormal Buzz Radio and or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is prohibited. Paranormal Buzz Radio will not be held responsible for you holding your knees, crying, and rocking in a corner in a puddle of your own urine, or being beheaded by a group of children in a cornfield. In fact, if you come across a group of children in a cornfield, we promise to make fun of you as you run away screaming in terror. Listener discretion is advised.
Ghost stories,
folklore,
psychics and mediums,
shamanism,
paranormal investigations,
haunted locations, and all that other weird shit.
You're listening to the Traveler's Moon Podcast
with the Paranomad, Chris Nielsen,
and Kelly McCarville, Moonspinner.
Here are your hosts, Chris and Kelly.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do everybody cover your ears real quick. Yahoo! We are back. I'm so excited.
We only missed one show.
We missed one show, and I get I get this weird little pent up Yahoo. We're back.
Pent up Yahoo.
I'm excited.
All the things we could say.
I miss our people. I miss the chats. I miss sitting in our office and.
It was weird.
Yeah,
it was weird not having a show.
When there's a big old hole in my heart.
Oh. Well, we could come back with something exciting, though,
right? So awesome. So thank you everybody for tuning in to the Traveler's Moon podcast. Back after a absentee week, we were exploring the dirty South.
We left it just as dirty as we found it.
Possibly dirtier. So yeah.
My poor liver.
We are back, and we're very excited. We have a very special guest for tonight. He is a host, an executive producer, adventurer, all-around great guy. Tonight, welcome Nash Hoover to the Traveler's Moon podcast. How's it going, man?
Good, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for making time. I know I reached out to you quite a while ago, so glad this date still worked. So, yeah, you're one of the ones that I had on my list of people when we were sitting down saying who all we wanted to invite. We do a lot of shows about paranormal and metaphysical and holistic and all that sort of stuff. But this is kind of a new topic for us. It's not something that we haven't ever brought up, but I kind of posted in one of my things. I'm by no means an expert. I'm like kindergarten level for all this. So I'm super excited about this.
I guess to kind of kick it all off, and Ash, kind of tell us what you do.
Yeah, so I am the host and co-creator, executive producer of Chasing Legends, which is a web series that follows myself and my team as we travel around and research different cryptid legends. We really take the boots on the ground approach, and we put ourselves in the environments that these things are supposed to live, and speak with people that are either experts or have had encounters to really kind of help us kind of put ourselves in their shoes, and then we go out and do a full investigation and trying to see if we can find some truth to what's being reported, or if we can, maybe find a logical explanation for certain things. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. We created it in 2013 and been going strong ever since.
Very cool. So go ahead.
Sorry.
Because I feel like we're about to ask the same question. You go right on ahead. Go.
So for those who are not 100% sure what all falls into the cryptid category, cool. What all falls into that category?
So obviously you have your usual ones, Bigfoot, lake monsters, things like that. Those are the ones that obviously people are going to know about, at least in my experience of talking with people that, or have no idea what any of this stuff is. They usually know one of those. Alien stuff kind of can fit into this stuff, but it's kind of its own monster in a sense. But pretty much it's anything that could be a biological animal that shouldn't be there. So it's anything, cryptozoology, it's an unknown animal sometimes undiscovered. Could be. Sometimes it could just be complete fabrication. A lot of it could just be folklore, misidentification, whatever. It's an animal that shouldn't be where it is. Yeah.
So like Sasquatch, Yeti, Loch Ness Monster would all fall into those things.
Chupacabra.
But that's
Wisconsin over here's got like the skunk ape.
That's what I was going to ask. Is like so that or like the Jersey Devil? Does all of that fall? Sorry if that was really loud, guys. We knocked over the microphone. Does that all fall into the cryptid category then?
Yes, all of those are cryptids. Would be considered cryptids.
See, I told you I know very little about that.
And honestly, that's good. So this is like Kelly mentioned. This teens leans closer to when we say supernatural stuff. It's more ghosts and psychic abilities, that sort of thing. We kind of want to cover the whole gamut of everything that some people might consider weird. So that's what Kelly brings to the table tonight. It's questions that maybe somebody who's new to this might.
I'm going to ask the embarrassing questions.
It's embarrassing. It's entry-level and it's good information for anybody who might not know.
I'm going to play the person you need to break out the crayons for because I'm licking windows when it comes to this category. But it's all good.
Yeah. And so with the paranormal stuff, everybody's got like that story. Like I grew up in a haunted house. That's how I got into ghosty stuff. Nash, how did you get into like cryptids? Because it seems like it's something that not a whole lot of people have that like initial hands-on experience story with. So do you have one of those, or is it something that's just always been interesting? Or
I wish there was like a very cool kind of story that kind of got me into this, but there really isn't. Like, and for the life of me, I can't remember like what that the thing was that originally got me researching this stuff. I've been researching this stuff since probably 2002, 2003. So I was in elementary school at the time. This was before. This is kind of like in the I'm 26. I'm 26.
I knew you were young, but I wasn't sure how young.
And this was back before the paranormal TV was kind of becoming a thing. I think Ghost Hunters might have been on early days, but there really was nothing else out there in terms of like cryptid stuff to really kind of interest. So a lot of it was reading books, and it kind of started with the Bigfoot stuff. I did a lot of research on Bigfoot and reading books about Bigfoot. That went into like Loch Ness Monster and stuff like that. And then I kind of got into the UFO topic, and it was all just checking out books from my elementary school library. And it got so frequent that the school librarian would like set aside books on the topic. So I would get a hold of them, or she would order in, new books about it specifically for me. And that was kind of my, introduction to the subject. And then as I got older, and then the shows started coming out, like Monster Quest and Destination Truth and all those other ones, it kind of opened things up, because then it kind of showed me that there was more than just Bigfoot and Loch Ness. There was all these other kind of more regionally specific ones, and there was other ones that are pretty widely known that I had not come across yet. And then that paired with my interest in filmmaking and whatnot kind of led to the creation of Chasing Legends.
Awesome. So for anybody who hasn't gotten into the whole Chasing Legends thing yet, so thus far in the filmmaking process, how many different cryptids have you gone to check out?
So far over the history of the show, we've released 7 episodes, 4 of which were a part of like our official season 1 that we just put out back in February. The first ever episode that we shot and released was actually a ghost hunt, which I can get into that later because that's a whole funny story. So for the show, we have looked into 6 cryptid cases that we have released, various numbers of ones that were either just research trips or episodes that just didn't make the cut. I personally have researched this stuff, tons and tons. I think I have a list of like 52 that I have actively researched over the years or still need to do more research that, would kind of sit on the list as like potential episode concepts in the future. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult because like, I'm in the Midwest and, there isn't an abundance of really cool cryptid cases that we can, kind of recommend.
Not.
Yeah.
So, for us, it's, there's usually, travel involved, which, comes with a lot of planning and
money.
getting the money together and whatnot.
Funding.
So, if, we lived in a different area, I'm sure the number would be a lot higher, but that's kind of what we have to deal with.
We feel that pain.
yeah.
I know what state you're from, and we're your neighbor to the south. So yeah. We feel that pain that there's not always things to get to easily without having to travel. But
you want to hunt ghosts, perfect. But
Right.
For some reason, Iowa is like it's a hot spot. We can see like the very satisfied like face I'm making right now, aside from Nash. But yeah, for some reason, Iowa's great with the ghost stuff. The cryptid stuff's a little less, which is super unfortunate.
So have you found any?
You found Bigfoot so far, right? Like,
I mean, like
I wish.
right?
We've definitely had some crazy encounters. I know our Mogyo Monster episode that was in our season 1, the Bigfoot case in our first season we had some pretty interesting things kind of happening to us in our night investigation. A lot of tree snaps, and we didn't see anything, unfortunately, but there was definitely something out there that was kind of messing with us. And I mean, I've heard wood knocks. I've found. I actually have it behind me. It's a canine footprint about the size of my hand, or about the palm of my hand, that we found in eastern Wisconsin, which has a lot of dogman, werewolf kind of sightings. So that was kind of a pretty significant find for us. We have various other things that have come back either inconclusive or whatever. Nothing really like definitive, like like that holy grail find yet, unfortunately.
Right.
But we'll get there
Eventually. That's the goal always. But
yeah, definitely.
So what experiences have you? I mean, what would you say would be like your most wow moment on any of your investigations?
When we were in Louisiana researching the Rougarou and we almost got attacked by alligators. That was yeah, that was a good one. And then that was probably the most frightening experience that we've ever had. In terms of the cryptid stuff, ghost hunting with the project, we've had some pretty crazy stuff. I would definitely say that was probably everyone was pretty on edge after that. And we're out in the swamp, no one around. I think there was like because we were like on this little boardwalk that like takes you out. I think it's like a 4-mile hike. I don't know if it's just one way or if it's there and back. I don't remember specifically, but the boardwalk is like 3 feet wide and there's no railings or nothing. It's just swamp on both sides. So it's like you have nowhere to go. Yeah. And, and then you're out there in the dark, and you have, 7 people that you're trying to, pretty much wrangle. And then you have all your equipment and just,
something that
it had rained like the day before we did our night investigation. So everything was kind of slick. So that on top of that, it was great. And then you had all of these spiders the size of my hand making new webs at face height. No. So yeah, that was an interesting one. I think yeah, it's probably like the biggest wow moment. Like, it's definitely an occupational hazard, but definitely not one that we expected to run into that soon.
Oh yeah, and that's got to be so. I'm a little twisted with my word "fun," but that's got to be one of the more like exciting things about going out and actually looking for cryptids, as opposed to like we'll go into, places that occasionally have air conditioning and heat, but actually going out into the woods, into the swamps to actually check these things out. And that's got to be a bit of a thrill, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, especially with like the 4 episodes that we shot last year. Just some of the places that we ended up in was just insane, and we literally we put ourselves in these environments like where we sometimes hike quite a distance to make sure that we are far away from anything that could contaminate our investigation. And which puts ourselves in obviously danger in that aspect, because if anything goes wrong, you're super far away from help. And I know when we were doing the Mogyo Monster, we were on top of the Mogyo Rim and we had no cell phone service. So we didn't have cell phone service, and we were like miles away from the closest road. So it was just there. There's so many. So you take safety as you try to go into it with that that safety cautious mindset, but you can't really predict anything, and you can't really plan for anything, because if someone falls and breaks their leg, well, shit, now we have to drag you out of here and all of our stuff.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
That last one you just
I was going to say, that was actually the same question, the Mogyo Monster.
Mogyo Monster? What? I don't know that one.
I'm not a super in-depth.
You would be surprised the people that are more so on the cryptid side of things that didn't know about it until either I brought it up to them or the episode. So the Mogyo Monster is Arizona's regional Bigfoot.
Okay.
So it's your typical Bigfoot description. That's just the name they gave it because the sightings date back later than the term Sasquatch was around. So, the term Sasquatch and Bigfoot kind of came from the Patterson-Gimlin stuff, which happened in the 60s. And the Mogyo Monster sightings date back, at least in modern times, to the early 1900s. And then there's even Native American reports of a, kind of hairy man in the area.
That's very cool.
Sorry, I don't think my phone is muted. I'm a horrible.
Don't think your phone's muted? Oh my gosh.
I'm a horrible host.
Unprofessional.
Yeah,
There's a notification that we have a podcast.
I didn't want to forget.
So then, I know as like a paranormal investigator, when it comes to like the ghost stuff, I've got like stuff that I know is within proximity that might not be necessarily super close. So is there like somewhere that you can go visit regularly and actually go like, go out and do like just a howl or something in the woods, or a wood knock, something you go actually, at least on a semi-regular basis, go kind of do your thing? Or is it something you have to keep waiting for these trips to come along?
Yeah. Minnesota has a pretty, semi-famous lake monster story, which is in Lake Pepin, which is right in between. It's a lake that it's within the Mississippi River. So the Mississippi River just widens and becomes this lake. So it's in between Minnesota and Wisconsin. We actually shot an episode on that back in 2014 because I had not heard about it until I really started researching stuff, and then it was like, oh, we have our own. They kind of call it Minnesota's Loch Ness, and Lake Pepin is almost similar in terms of size as Loch Ness, but it's not anywhere close as deep as Loch Ness. But yeah, I used to go out there pretty regularly. It was at least once a month. I would just kind of go out there and walk the shores, see if I saw anything. I'm in a first name basis with a lot of the people in the town of Lake City, which is kind of the main town on the lake, just because I went out there so frequently. Haven't been out there as much lately as I would like to. I definitely want to get back out there soon. But yeah, that for me is kind of the one that I always can kind of count on. I can always just go if I want to. It's only an hour drive for me. But then I have stuff in Wisconsin too that I can always go look at, because for some reason Wisconsin took all the cool stuff in the Midwest and all the weird stuff and just kind of has it all. So yeah, there's tons of weird stuff in Wisconsin I can always go look at, but Lake Pepin for me is the most attainable.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I'm actually using it as a weird transition. So Nash, usually the way these shows work is we'll chat for about the first half hour, and then after that we open it up to questions and just kind of see where it goes from there out of the straight chat. But I think this is going to kind of transition into Darren's question. So Darren wants to know, do you think we have actual werewolves to be found, and I want to expand that to werewolves or dogmen. Kind of where your stance are on that.
That was gonna be my follow-up question. Do you mean werewolves in the traditional sense of it's a guy that, or someone that transforms from a full moon, or do you mean like a dogman in the sense where it's a large, sometimes can be bipedal wolf creature?
I think we have a question for the peanut gallery.
So wait, like a dog man is a dog man all the time, but a werewolf transforms. I told you I know nothing about this breakup.
So if you think of werewolves in like kind of like the Romanian folklore or European folklore, the kind of that pop culture, Wolfman in London type thing, where it's somebody that gets cursed or gets bitten by someone that's already a werewolf, so then they become a werewolf, and they only become a werewolf on like a full moon. Right. Whereas a dog man is its own creature. It's not a person. It's an animal. Some people will say that we'll kind of blend the two. From my research, at least like within the Wisconsin dogman stuff, it seems like it is its own. It's just a very large wolf that people are reporting. That's just from my experience. There's definitely people in Wisconsin, and I know there's other people around the country that research the dogman stuff pretty extensively that might say otherwise, but from what I have kind of read and gathered, it is like its own kind of creature.
I wonder if those would be those wolves that are supposedly extinct.
I was about to say, so from that, are you going with the idea that it's like a new species of wolf, or we just miscategorize the extinction of the dire wolf?
That's what I was thinking of, yeah.
It
could just be a misidentification, because there are reports of incredibly large wolves in Montana and like farther north into Canada. A good friend of mine, Carrick St. Laurent, did a whole research thing on this, and he kind of included me on this, where he found that the farther north you got, the larger the wolves got. So, which I
can see kind of that correlation, because you have a lot more larger prey game. Like further north you get, that's where you get more of the elk and mule deer and that sort of thing, which leads to a larger wolf.
Yeah.
So who's to say that's not what people are seeing, and some have maybe migrated a little bit south. It also could come into play where with a lot of the sightings in Wisconsin, the reintegration of the gray wolf happened pretty recently. So a lot of that could just be people that have never seen a gray wolf in person, and then their mind immediately associates it with the stories of like the Beast of Bray Road or other dogman sightings in the area. That's just kind of that's a lot of what we kind of look into and explore is there's these other logical explanations to these stories.
So two following questions to that. Do dogmen walk on 2 or 4 legs?
I would say 4. There are a lot of sightings where people say they're on 2. But wolves have been shown to rear up occasionally, which could also fall into that misidentification category where someone is just seeing a wolf on its hind legs. It's rare, but it does happen. So
it sounds like dogmen, you kind of believe that's a possibility, if nothing else, being mistaken for real wolves.
So Mom
what
had
about
also
werewolves?
so hit the werewolves first. All right. So werewolves in the traditional sense. Have you ever come across anything outside of, that traditional Romanian Celtic? Thank you, St. Patrick, because he's one of the original werewolf stories, where it was a clan in modern day Ireland where he tried to give them Jesus, and they're like, no thanks, and he's like, okay, every 7 years a couple's going to turn into a wolf. That's where some of the lineage of the werewolf comes from. But anyways, I thought a long tangent. Sorry.
There's a guest. Remember?
Yes. So Darren was actually curious about like a werewolf in the traditional sense. Have you ever come across anything that might lend to the idea of that being anywhere near factual?
I mean, the Rougarou case that we investigated with season 1, which is our the Louisiana, which that is a Cajun werewolf, like through and through. Like all the stories of that are it's somebody that gets cursed and is cursed to walk, as a werewolf creature. But with that one, it's not attached to the full moon. Like if you're cursed and become a Rougarou, you are a Rougarou forever. Or unless someone is able to break that, that kind of that trance or that curse on you. And then there's the stories that go along with it where someone gets cursed and the Rougarou kind of like attaches themselves to them, where they don't necessarily become a Rougarou, but they have one that's always kind of over their shoulder. And just kind of, a lot of it has to do with, if you do commit a crime, do something really, really bad, then you are cursed with the Rougarou in the Cajun folklore. And I kind of made the comment of, it kind of seems like it's a physical manifestation of guilt. And the guy we were interviewing was like, I've not heard that before, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, and so he had, the guy that we had talked to, he had a lot of good stories, and I guess his grandfather apparently knew somebody that had seen a Rougarou, and I guess he said that he reported as it was like the saddest looking thing he'd ever seen, because it was somebody that become a Rougarou, and they're obviously depressed that they have to now walk as a Rougarou. And one of the stories with it is if you know who the person is that is the Rougarou, you cannot reveal who it is for a year and a day. Otherwise, you have the possibility of becoming a Rougarou.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it was really.
That sounds very cursy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds very much like a curse type thing. Huh. All right. You want to move on to this one?
Which one?
Darren?
No, actually, I want to hit that one a little bit later.
Okay.
So we had talked about, you had mentioned earlier the Beast of Bray Road. So Mom Pat in chat was actually wondering, is that something you've actually gone out and looked into yet, or is that still on the bucket list?
I have been out to Bray Road twice. That's kind of one of those other ones where it was one we. It was an episode that really didn't make it off the cutting room floor, just because it was pretty chaotic. It was back before we really kind of had like our shit together and kind of knew what we were doing, and it didn't really go the direction that we wanted it to go. But yes, Bray Road is an interesting one. However, for me, if you've never been to Bray Road, it is literally you guys are from Iowa. So
right.
Picture just the middle of nowhere road with fields on both sides and small patches of trees. That's Bray Road.
That's depressingly easy.
Yeah.
So that's, that for me, it's like the Beast of Bray Road story kind of stems from like one sighting. And then that was just, called the Beast of Bray Road, but there really aren't like continued sightings on Bray Road. There's definitely stuff like in the area, but Bray Road, there's nowhere for anything to live. That wouldn't have been found. So that's kind of what I tell a lot of people. Like I'll ask them, like, have you ever been to Bray Road? Have you ever seen photos of Bray Road? And a lot of times it's no, I've just heard the story. It's like, okay, well, this is what it is. And usually it kind of changes people's perspectives. Like, oh, okay. So from what I have looked into, the Beast of Bray Road was essentially just like one encounter that just became this whole thing. And it's not something that other people were seeing in different areas around the area. No, it was one sighting. It was one sighting. There are definitely stories in the area of like Elkhorn and southeastern Wisconsin that often get attached to the Beast of Bray Road stuff, but they weren't actually seen on Bray Road.
Yeah, and that almost kind of makes sense, because I think when a lot of people kind of get into, like, if they're just kind of grazing the surface of the cryptid stuff, it's like, oh, this is where this thing lives. Like, I saw it on this road, it's where it's got to be. When if you're potentially dealing with an animal, you're dealing more with a habitat. you have that opportunity for movement and migration.
Who's to say, I was going to say, who's to say it wasn't migrating and it just happened to be right there at that particular time?
And what's funny about it is we actually, when we were out there, we talked with a guy that was like, yeah, I know where the story came from. We're like, oh yeah, what do you mean? He's like, it wasn't a mysterious creature at all. He's like, it was the town drunk had a big fur coat on and he was just wobbling out there and got hit by a car. And that's where the story came from. And I'm like, that makes sense. Like, that's like the most Midwest monster story ever. Like, it's, so if that kind of has any truth or anything, I mean, obviously we really didn't like investigate that report any further, but like that was what the guy talked about. I mean, if you go into the town of Elkhorn, at least when we went, no one wants to talk about it because, I mean, when the story happened, and then after that, it was kind of like almost like that typical kind of cash grab thing. The town was in on it. Well, then they made a really bad horror movie about it. And after that, the town was like, never mind, we don't want to touch this anymore. So we pretty much walked around the town and we're like, hey, we like to talk about the Beasterburg Road. And everyone's like, no, we don't want to talk about it. So we came across this guy and he's like, yeah, I'll talk about it. He's like, this is the story that I heard. And this is, apparently how it started. And
like, it was my buddy's mom walking home from the bar.
It's brutally Midwest. So I guess that's kind of a question I had. So through the paranormal stuff we do, there's a lot of research involved. Going through and, doing your own research on the cryptid stuff, I know for us, we hit a lot of, oh my gosh, this is a fantastic, wonderful story. Like, I'm very excited to look into this more. And then once you look into it, it's like, oh my gosh, this is, this is some it's bullshit. It's, some drunk dude in a fur jacket got hit by a car, that sort of thing. Has there ever been a time where you've been very excited to get into a particular, cryptid story of an area, and it just turns out to be just the biggest letdown?
All the time. Yeah, like especially like when we first kind of started this, that's what we hit all the time, because we would like find things and like, oh, this would be cool when like it's it's somewhat close, like we can get there in like a few hours, whatnot, and then we would like dig deeper into it and be like, oh, never mind, like it's just another Hodag story where it's just total fiction, but the town just kind of goes in on it and it's cool. The biggest thing for us is we find stories that are really good, and there's like tons of like evidence in some form, tons of verbal stories, tons of recorded stories, and then we cannot find anybody that can talk about it. We can't find anybody in any of the research that we come across that we can reach out to interview, which is kind of obviously a big thing for us. So like on a production standpoint, that's like the biggest hurdle, is trying to find people to talk to. And with some of these are really good. Like, I've researched ones in like Central America, and there's a lot of really good ones in Central America, but a lot of it is like kind of tribal stories and local folklore that just goes back, hundreds and hundreds of years. But then you can't find anybody that has actually had like either current sightings or can kind of be like that expert in, about it, to talk about it. So it's kind of one of those things where you would just kind of have to show up and hope that you come across somebody, which for us is not feasible because, it's a lot of money to go to some of these places and then just have it be a huge letdown if we can't talk to anybody. So that's kind of like our biggest thing. But yeah, there's definitely tons of ones that I've wanted to do, and then after further research, it's just like, oh, never mind. Yeah, this is not anything that's worth our time.
Yeah, and actually, we've hit about that half-hour point. We've opened we've hit the Q&A section.
We got there a little early.
We did get there a little early, but I felt like it transitioned well into the conversation.
So I have a stupid question.
Oh, go.
So, because
there's no such thing
TV shows are always accurate, right? So in the shows that I've seen about like the Bigfoot, Sasquatch, all of that, they always talk about something pounding on a tree. What is that? Why is that a real thing, and why?
The idea behind that is that primates in the wild have demonstrated tree knocking as a form of communication, either banging with a stick or with rocks. This is a proven, documented thing from known primates. So the idea is that, if Sasquatch is a undiscovered primate, that they're going to exhibit kind of the same behaviors. So that's where that comes from. It's not just some dude out in the woods was like, hey, let's try this. Like it is actually backed by some scientific study and research.
Okay.
Is it effective all the time? No. But it is nothing, and I feel like that gets laughed at a lot by people that don't realize that it actually is based on actual primate activity or behavior. For me, that's kind of like one of the things that I've always come across is like probably the most made fun of thing in the cryptid community is knocking on trees or like the howling and stuff. But I know people that do it often and get good results. I haven't. I mean, I've heard wood knocks in the woods before, and I didn't even initiate any sort of contact. Like we were out in Wisconsin one time, and it was like -25. It was mid-February, and we were the only idiots out in the woods looking for anything. We had literally just gotten out of the car, and we were just kind of like getting ready to head out into the woods, and we heard 3 hollow knocks come out of the forest, and that there's no one else was out there. Like
That would be cool.
no one else was out there banging on trees or anything like that. So it was that for me was kind of like one of the most unexplained moments that I've ever experienced, and it happened to kind of collate with a lot of these Bigfoot reports.
Oh yeah, definitely. And so I'm kind of weird guy. I actually enjoy like wintertime hiking. Obviously not like the dead of a Midwestern winter, like when it's like -20. But as soon as we start seeing like 30s or so, getting a single layer or two on, and you go in the woods, it is super quiet. And I think that's kind of what I like, but it's very peaceful, kind of quiet. So to hear just that hard knock out there, that doesn't happen.
And it echoed like pretty substantially. So it was loud. Like it was like we have no idea where it came from. Like we immediately after that, we kind of like all looked at each other like, what the hell? And Kelly, you know Josh Hurd, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was me and him were like the two that really heard it. Like we both get out of the car. He lights up a cigarette. We hear it. We both just slowly look at each other. And you had the classic like Josh Hurd. He was like, dude. And I'm like, yeah. I heard that. So yeah, that was, and I bring it up to him all the time. Like, do you remember this? Like, and he's like, yeah. He's like, it's kind of hard to forget you dragging me into the, into the -25.
So did he light up 3 more cigarettes and run back to the car? Because that's a very Josh move.
No, he didn't actually. He followed us pretty. He was good on that one. He actually went along with it pretty well. I'm sure he hated it, but.
Yeah. And I totally was not making fun of it by asking that question. I didn't know that about the whole primate thing. I just was curious why. I mean, I assume every animal has their own noise, so the calling to it made sense to me. But the whole knocking on the tree, I'm like, I don't get this. Why are they doing this? So now I know. I'm gonna be so much more educated when we're done.
So that does kind of lead into the questions, and Darren is a big question guy in the comment section.
He's our king question guy. We love him.
King question. Darren is king question. I'm going to make him a t-shirt. I've just decided that. So when it comes to Bigfoot, and I'm going to throw a couple things in on this. When it comes to Bigfoot, the generally accepted thing is it's potentially that missing link. It's definitely a primate. Is it something that like predated humans? Maybe, we don't know, but it's generally accepted that it is something here that is a primate. Darren's curiosity is something that I've been hearing weirdly a lot lately. And I don't know if it's stuff you've heard as well. It's the concept that Bigfoot is maybe something else. If the Bigfoot is, potentially extraterrestrial in form, which to me is very
all the time. I hear this all the time,
and we get. I personally don't subscribe to this idea, but if we're getting visited by Wookiees, that's pretty damn cool.
So there are, and this is something I have researched pretty heavily. There are sometimes correlations with Sasquatch and UFO sightings. For some reason, if you look at a map of reported UFO sightings and reported Sasquatch sightings in the U.S., you could pretty much set them on top of each other and they would all match. This is a theory. This is a theory on why, one, they're so hard to find. Two, we've never found a body. And, there are reports of hunters coming across them in the woods and shooting at them and they vanish. And you can go so many different directions with this. I don't know about it. I'm on what you would call like the aper perspective, where it is just like your missing link, unidentified species of hominid. But as a researcher, I can't ignore those correlations. Now, when you get into the stuff where it's like an extra dimensional being, that's when I'm like, okay, get out of here with that, because that seems to be something that's come up lately, where it's like it's a extra dimensional being, and it lives in a wavelength of light that we can't see, and that's why they're invisible to the naked eye, and they just kind of reveal themselves when they want to, and they can run through the forest at 40 miles an hour without touching the ground. I've met some pretty odd people in my travels. I don't really take to that. Obviously, as someone that, as a storyteller and going out there and talking with these people, I'm obviously going to entertain them. But personally, I don't take to that side of things.
So aside from the alien, and I'd heard the interdimensional being thing, which I had a hard time with, period. I've heard UFOs, aliens, interdimensional beings. I'm not sure where I stand with that, but I had heard recently the concept that Bigfoot is some sort of, and this goes with the, a hunter shot at it and it disappeared. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to their physical movement type things. You
can't ever find them.
That Bigfoot is some sort of Neanderthalic ghost.
I have heard of that, but yes, that's another one that I've seen pop up, and it usually gets laughed out of the groups and stuff.
Yeah, I tend to lean aper, but I heard the Neanderthal ghost, and I'm like, but you never hear of a caveman ghost.
Well, and
I feel like there's just this couple times, and it's almost kind of weird, and it falls into your category of this soul evolution thing. And
yeah,
but
there's got to be some that stick around, just like there's some ghosts that stick around forever too. So it's I don't know. I mean, there's kind of where I fall to potentially. There's maybe a little more weight behind that is the fact that we never find a dead one. We very rarely find physical evidence of them, but even when you do, a ghost can leave behind a handprint or a footprint or, so I don't know. I mean, I could see where that theory came from, but I think it would also be
me when it comes to when people bring up the, why we haven't found a body type thing. If you were to look at a cemetery and removed all the headstones, would you think that there were tons of dead bodies there?
Oh, so you go with the idea that they bury.
If they're potentially intelligent enough to evade, being discovered for this long, who's to say that they don't also, bury their dead, which is one of the kind of the big theories on why we have never discovered anything. Is that's why, that's what it is. But of course, with anything in the cryptozoological field, especially when it comes to Bigfoot, you really don't know until you know.
Oh, yeah,
and that's and that's kind of one of the things that it's eventually, and I cross my fingers, eventually something will be found.
Oh yeah, and in the meantime, it keeps it fun and exciting.
Holy Grail, something. I mean. And big discoveries have been found in the terms of the Sasquatch phenomenon around the world. I mean, there's so many cultural variants of Sasquatch that are all described as pretty much the same thing. And these are from cultures that knew nothing about one another, but were all describing similar creatures. And so it's one of those things where it's like I think a lot of people don't realize how old the Bigfoot phenomena actually is. Like it didn't start with with Robert Pattinson. Wow. It didn't start with the Patterson-Gimlin film.
I just somewhere between Edward Cullen and trying to accept the fact he's my Batman right now.
I know, right? Anyway, it did not start with the Patterson-Gimlin film, and a lot of like the modern day stuff and the big interest in the Bigfoot phenomenon obviously stemmed from that, because that's single-handedly one of the greatest pieces of Bigfoot evidence ever. Because it's to this day has never been proven falsified or whatever. It's in that happy area that we like to call unknown, and so eventually something will happen. Something will come forward, and I just hope, for the sake of the creatures themselves, that it doesn't become something horrible for them.
Right.
But
because I could see if we found out for sure that they're real and there's a way to track them, there'd be assholes out there hunting them. I mean, like, them just to find them. Like,
but I mean, who knows? There could be people out there that have had, a Class A evidence. They've collected that Holy Grail evidence, or they've, had that perfect photograph, and they've kept it secret for that fact.
That like, even like with the paranormal photo, like the spirit photography I take, there's a lot of like, oh, that's some wicked Photoshop skills, bud.
Yeah.
That too, just kind of keeping it to themselves for that, fear of that scrutiny.
The internet has ruined paranormal research.
Oh my gosh, in the worst way.
Yeah, and for every legit something that's out there, there's 100 that aren't legit, and it makes it so hard then to say, but really mine's real, it's just, it's tough.
And obviously, we're, all three of us are people that, our content is used on the internet. I have a web series, you guys have, a podcast, in the same hand that it's helped the paranormal field, it's destroyed the paranormal field.
Yeah.
Because you have the people like us that use it positively to spread research and proper information, and then you have the people that are like, "Hey, look at this blurry photo that I took that I zoomed in on 300 times, and see that thing right there." Then you get that.
See that pixel that I'm calling a ghost. Yeah.
And what's funny is it's like that. That scenario that I just described is something that happens in both ghost hunting and cryptozoology.
Oh yeah.
That's like the one medium that we share.
It's the blurry photograph.
Is that. And I see it all the time. Like I have people that come up to me and are like, "Look at this," and I'm like, "Oh wow, cool." And it's like I don't see anything, but all right,
Yeah.
You say so, bud.
See that right there, and I'm like, it's an interesting picture.
It's obviously not verbatim, but this Mitch Hedberg hit a bit, and it was basically like, Bigfoot he's out there, and we should all be very concerned because he's very, very blurry. There's a large out of focus monster running the woods, and we should all be terrified.
That's my whole thing. It's like, why does any time someone puts out any sort of information, like it's 2020, like phones are pretty good when it comes to cameras. Why is everyone using the potato from 95? Like, what? Why does everybody, like, I can whip out my phone camera and just quickly snap a photo, and it's going to look 10 times better than some of these ones people are posting. It's like, why? Like, are you just
it's
so,
almost
like,
like
in the
they had
moment?
to go get it developed, and you heard, like, the zit before the picture was actually taken?
You can get detailed pictures of the moon now.
That's what I mean.
Blurry
like
pictures.
Why are we here? Why is this still We should be at the point now where we can get good photos of something.
So is it still called pareidolia if people are seeing Bigfoots in their photos?
Yeah, because you're seeing, especially if there's nothing there. It's the same phenomenon. It's the same deal. but obviously in a different context.
Yeah.
Whereas with you guys say pareidolia when it's it's a hallway or in a room, where we get pareidolia where it's you're taking a photo of the forest and look right there. You zoom in on this bush and it looks like there's a face. Like that's what we get all the time.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing, just with different background.
Definitely.
All right. So unfortunately, we're getting close to 10 minutes, and we have like just a huge string of questions. So I'm going to we're going to try to knock out 3 because it's had come from a couple people. So Mama Pat and Darren both want to know if you've ever heard of anything outside of Lake Winnebago.
I don't know where that is.
I would assume Wisconsin, just because.
Hold on, let me do a little.
Oh no, that might be Indiana, because isn't the Winnebago? Isn't the Winnebago?
Is it? It is a lake in Wisconsin.
I would assume. It is a lake in Wisconsin.
I have not heard of anything in Lake Winnebago. But I'm sure with Wisconsin, for some reason, Wisconsin, like every lake has something, and it's crazy to me.
And I think that's kind of just a side effect of like where people end up, because people always end up by the water, and where there's a cluster of people, you end up with stories, and those stories end up becoming those legends and folklore, and for a lot of cultures, is the form of cryptids and that sort of thing.
So unfortunately, no, but I'm sure there is, because it's Wisconsin.
And this is actually so next question 2 of the 3, and I kind of like this question. So Darren wants to know: is there a cryptid out there that you're actually really excited about that for some reason nobody else is talking about?
I mean, most of the ones that I look into, someone has talked about. I get a lot of like positive feedback from the fact that we look into things that like not a lot of people have heard of. So there are definitely ones on my list that don't get that level of that they don't get in the limelight as per se. The Orang Pendex is definitely one for me, but that one does get talked a lot about in the cryptid community. The Ropin would be a cool one. That one doesn't get talked necessarily enough about because there is a lot of cool stuff there. So the Ropin is a kind of large pterodactyl-esque creature that is seen in Papua New Guinea.
Okay, so that's fascinating.
It's in where?
Papua New Guinea, South America.
Okay.
Have you happened to heard of the Van Meter creature?
Yeah, I've been to the Van Meter. I go to the Van Meter Visit Festival every year.
Oh, awesome! So would you say that's like
I'm speaking there this year?
Oh, awesome! So would you say this from a similar lineage then?
Yeah, it's definitely it definitely kind of has a lot of similar characteristics. Especially one big one is that it reportedly generates a light.
Yeah.
Van Meter supposedly has it generates the light out of the top of its head. The Ropin, a lot of their sightings are similar, or it's kind of torso belly area is said to glow, and that's kind of what a lot of people say with Ropin sightings is they're at night you kind of see that glowing ball of light flying across the sky. And from my knowledge, at least from what I've heard a lot, that planes aren't allowed to fly at night in Papua New Guinea, so it kind of lends a lot of credence. I've seen a lot of back and forth on that. I've seen people say yes they do. I've seen people say no they don't. But yeah, that's one of the kind of interesting correlations between Van Meter and the Ropin is that the light generation.
So it's like a great big lightning bug.
Essentially. Yeah, really. And
I'm not even disagreeing. It's just the almost oversimplification was fantastic.
Yeah, really though. And the Ropin is said to kind of live in the old like Japanese bunkers and stuff that are still left on the island from World War II, and supposedly
creature went into that mine.
Mhm.
Yeah, both semi-subterranean and yeah, that's one that I've always wanted to look into. And from what I found, that there's one guy in Papua New Guinea that, like, for the whole country, he's like the only one that's actually researching any cryptids. So like, and I've talked to the guy a few times, and he's a pretty good guy. He's definitely got some good theories. So that's definitely one that I would like to do sometime in the future. Papua New Guinea is not necessarily the safest place to go, but nowhere that any cool story like this is definitely going to be a safe.
But you can add to
Yeah,
your
it's
alligator story.
honestly like
Exactly.
a fantastic story, which kind of falls into the last question. So, if resources were unlimited and you maybe didn't necessarily get a result, but just for the adventure itself, which is always it's always a big thing for me, anyways, is that like the adventure is part, like the journey is all of it. You get finding that's absolutely incredible. But if you had a dream hunt, like unlimited resources, you could go, check out wherever you want under any circumstances with whatever equipment you had. What's your dream hunt?
Tasmanian tiger.
Awesome. I like how quickly that answer came up.
That's I get asked this a lot, and that's for me is like I'm obsessed with this animal. I don't know why, but I've always just had a fascination for it. I mean, it's my cell phone background. And for those that don't know, Tasmanian tiger actually isn't a tiger; it's a marsupial. It's known as the thylacine, and it's was a real animal. Lived in Tasmania and Australia and in parts of Papua New Guinea as well. And it was completely hunted to extinction. The last one died in a zoo in 1936, I think. And it was essentially human error. Like, it was locked out of its cage and froze to death. Like, it was like the worst way to go. Like, especially from a creature that was like ended from humanity. Like, the last one that was known to exist was killed because of human stupidity.
That sounds like people think too.
But it's still seen. Like, there's still people that are reporting seeing the Tassie tigers in a lot of the sightings are in Tasmania, obviously for the namesake, and then southern Australia, the state of Victoria area. The reason it kind of was dubbed the Tasmanian tiger is because it has like these like stripes, like almost like tiger stripes down its back. But yeah, they're a carnivorous marsupial. They're young. They're like a kangaroo. Their young is born. They have joeys. They're born into the little pouch on their stomachs, and they incubate their babies there. And but they just, the reason they were they're killed off is because they were they went extinct in mainland Tasmania when the dingoes were introduced, and then they were hunted to extinction on the island of Tasmania because they were attacking livestock. So they literally put a bounty on the heads of these animals, and they were just eradicated. But yeah, that would be for me. That would be the ultimate, and I pretty much already have planned out how I would do it too, like 2-3 week expedition. Investigating both, southern Australia as well as Tasmania, and just living out there for, a few weeks just to see if I can, find any evidence. And, that's for me, that would be the big one.
That'd be fun.
That would be the one where once I did it, I'd be like, okay, now what?
Yeah. You have to hope that there's still one out there somewhere.
That's not an unheard of thing.
Yeah, I mean, the whole
Scotland,
the whole process of determining an animal extinct is so bonkers, because it's no one actually goes out there and tries to count these animals. Like, they just well, no one's seen one in a few weeks, I guess they're dead. Like, it's
I could
that's essentially the whole process. I mean, it wasn't declared extinct until the 80s, but I mean, sightings still happened in between that gap of the last one dying and then it being declared extinct.
You have to think that there is so much Earth that people don't get to, that they don't have access to it. What animals are out there that we have no clue, you know?
Exactly. And that's where cryptozoology comes into.
And if somebody was hunting your ass down, wouldn't you go find one of those areas? I mean, no.
There's so many areas on this planet that have never been seen by man. But yet there's this notion for some reason that everything's been discovered when there's new discoveries daily of animals and plants, you know, from the people that are like, screw it, I'm going in. And, you know, so who isn't to say, one, a lot of these cryptid stories are just, you know, a totally new animal. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, or who's to say some of these, you know, just once extinct animals couldn't, you know, still be out there that just, you know, were like, screw you, we're going to go hide here because, you know, we know you're not going to come and get us.
Or maybe there's been a whole population of it in this 500 square mile area that nobody's ever been in, you know, we just didn't know they were there because nobody's been there. Yeah. Like a huge, massive population, but nobody's been there, so we don't know.
Yeah, that's what makes cryptozoology fun, because it's, you know, you're pretty much going up against everything.
Too fun.
I
know. I still have a million questions.
I think we need to start planning a Nash Hoover episode too.
I'm in.
This has been a lot of fun.
I am more knowledgeable than I was walking into this. Appreciate that. So, before we wrap up the show, I want to give you an opportunity. Definitely, where can people find you? You're obviously full of knowledge, and we would love to talk to you more. I'm sure other people would as well. I know you do some conventions because that's where I've met you. What do you have coming up? Where can people see you?
So I will be speaking this year at the Van Meter Visitor Festival in Van Meter, Iowa. It will be my 7th year there, I think. 6th or 7th. I don't know. I've been to all of them except for the very first one. So that's where I'll be. I'll be there the whole day. I'm going to be doing a presentation on the global Sasquatch phenomena. So I'll be talking about Bigfoot around the world, I think is what we're calling it. So I'll be, you know, speaking about all the regional Bigfoot as well as the ones, you know, here in the United States. That's all I have right now.
Things are just opening back up, though.
Yeah, exactly. So that's usually the one that's for me. That's usually the only one I'll do sometimes, just because it is so much fun. But I'll be there the whole day. Come out. I'll have a booth. Come say hi. Talk to me. Let's share stories. I love interacting with people. So please come out and say hi, and let's hang out. And I think some of my other crew members will be there with me too. I think Michaela, my cousin, will be there, and our audio guy Jack might be there. But I will kind of keep everyone informed on that stuff. So www.chasinglegendscrew.com is our website. That's kind of a one-stop shop for everything. All of our episodes are there. Photos of the whole crew are there, so you can kind of get to know who everybody is and what they do. I'm on Instagram at Nash Hoover, all one word. Chasing Legends is on Instagram and Facebook at Chasing Legends TV, all one word. And then I don't remember what the YouTube username is, but just search Chasing Legends, you'll find it. There's a documentary about the Tour de France called Chasing Legends, but I think you'll be able to distinguish cryptozoology from Bigfoot. So you can either just search Chasing Legends on YouTube, find us. Otherwise, you can go to the website, and we have a button where you can just subscribe right through the website without having to go to YouTube. And then, yeah. You know, if you find me on social media, shoot me a message. Like I said, I love interacting with people. But yeah, that's all of them.
Yeah, and definitely, guys, get out there and check out those shows that are out there, the Chasing Legend episodes. Season 1's been released. It's some really good work. I maybe am a hardcore judger on how things are.
It was all shot during the pandemic, so we pulled it all off while also trying to battle COVID.
But it was done well. So go out, check them out, give them a like. Be sure to subscribe to check out the future episodes that are coming out. If you get a chance to stop into the Van Meter Festival, I suppose I will forgive you guys for going on Saturday. But then you have to swing up to the Ames Psychic and Paranormal Expo on Sunday, because you can't skip the expo too. So
I might skip some of the expo. Ames and Van Meter are so close.
That's not how this works.
We'll discuss it later.
Yeah, you guys better.
It feels like a plug.
Unfortunately, so my Mama Pat, who's in chat, and I actually host 5 expos throughout Iowa throughout the year. And we have one of our expos that same weekend. It was our only option. I know the Van Meter Festival is always the last weekend in September, but it was the only option they gave us. So,
well, if you guys won't be there, everyone come see me. I'll fill in.
Go in on Saturday, go to the Van Meter Festival, and then Sunday show up at the expo, and we'll forgive you.
Synergy.
Synergy. Make it a whole weekend getaway.
In Iowa. It's great.
Yeah. Travel destination
it's
of the world, right?
I feel like it's an underrated state. Like,
I actually
love stuff, it gets boring, but there's certain parts of Iowa that are kind of great.
So, like, fun little story. So, I actually met my girlfriend of almost 5 years in Des Moines, she is from La Crosse, Wisconsin, and I'm from Northfield, Minnesota. So, like, we're people that don't live anywhere near each other, met in Des Moines, and are now living together and expecting our first child. So,
congratulations.
Iowa has a very near and dear place in my heart, and because Chad Lewis initially invited me down for the first Van Meter Festival, which was the second Van Meter Festival first. So my first Van Meter Festival, which ended up being a huge moment in my career because I got to meet all kinds of really cool people from Iowa who I later am still good friends with. And yeah, I used to go to Iowa twice a year for Van Meter and other things, and I haven't been there since the 2019 Van Meter Festival. So I'm long overdue for an Iowa trip.
I could potentially fix this. Anyways.
Her wheels are turning.
Always. So
back myself in
shit, I just hit my cat. All right. Well, we are over our time limit. Thank you for hanging in there.
Most definitely. I feel rusty. Do you think I might knock the sign off out of the park?
I'm pretty sure you're going to handle it. It's been one show.
Right, here we go. We're going to fall into character. And
wait, before we do this, don't we have to say what we're doing for our show next time?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So 2 weeks from now, we are going to be back, and we are going to be doing, I don't remember what you called it.
It's going to be battlefields, plantations, and voodoo. You're going to look at a complete recap of both her experience and our intuitive psychic abilities, what we experienced on our trip to the Dirty, because aside from getting inebriated in New Orleans, we had a lot of cool experiences. We went to old battlefields, we went to old plantation houses, and I know at one point we did a
hospital.
Oh yeah, a lot of cool stuff. And I know we recapped it partway through, but you guys didn't get the whole story, and you want that whole story.
Definitely.
So be sure.
We're going to have to leave out some details because oof. But what happens in New Orleans stays in New Orleans.
Hey man, I was there in October. I know what you're talking about.
Yep. We can only share what we remember. Those sort of things. So.
And what happens on the Traveler's Moon podcast stays everywhere because you're listening to the Traveler's Moon podcast. If you're listening to the live show, we love you. Thank you for participating in chat. We're pretty sure all of you do, but just in case you don't, stop by Traveler's Moon on anywhere on social media at Traveler's Moon. Be sure to like, subscribe, keep up to date with all of our stuff. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up. I'm looking at a little screen right now. We got a cool, looks like a podcast coming up called Battlefields, Plantations, and Voodoo. That sounds cool.
That's
exciting.
What you just talked about.
I know. We're going to be at the Iowa Metaphysical Fair this upcoming weekend, the 22nd and the 23rd. We have a TBD podcast coming up, as well as the Summer Solstice event at the Cambry House. A little ways out, but that is June 19th. You're also going to keep an eye out for live streams from the Lemp Mansion in St. Louis and the Waverly fucking Hills Sanatorium. If you guys are listening to the recorded show, know we love you, but we do love you a little less. You should be stopping by the live show.
Somebody is going to take that personally.
Well, they should stop by the live show and tell me what they think. And if you are listening and you still haven't done what I told the people in the chat to do, be sure to like and subscribe. Keep up with everything Traveler's Moon. We're live every other Wednesday. If you don't know when that's going to be, that's where the social media comes in. thank you, you sexy beaches. We so love you came in. I miss this. I miss this a lot. Okay, out of character.
Huge thank you to our guest, again, Nash Hoover. We appreciate you for coming on. It was a great time. Definitely going to have a part 2 because
anytime.
I would completely agree. There will be it's not like the end of a Marvel movie credits. Like you will see so and so your favorite action hero in whatever. You will see Nash Hoover again in Nash Hoover episode 2. Yeah, we just don't know when that'll be because sometimes they fire a fantastic director like James Gunn and they have to spend years recounting the situation. And
we don't have that issue.
Sometimes
I am the director.
Well, there you go.
All right, cool.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Are we?
I feel like we're good.